Hello, it's Sis Volk. Time to enjoy card making with me. This time I really wanted to make a men's card. I have these two stamps from AlinaCraft. One stamp with all kinds of figures and one stamp with a plate pattern. Today I'm going to try to combine these two stamps with each other. AlinaCraft has many different background stamps that you can use in many different ways. I love this background stamp with all the different images on it. For the text, this time I'm using these text stamps from AlinaCraft. There are 4 text stamps for different occasions. This one is meant to be stamped once and then die cut with the included banner die. I keep my strips with the stamp set. And for this card I'm also bringing out the Kilt Essential shape dies again. Let's get started. I use an A4 paper to make a square card that measures 13.5 centimeters. I always do the creasing on the outside of the card. This way you get a nice smooth and straight edge. Only then do I cut the card to size. In this case I have a card of 13.5 centimeters. But you could also say that this card is 5¼ inch tall. As you could see in one of my earlier videos, I used a plastic craft sheet that I have sprayed with glue. This way the paper sticks well without the need for magnets. At the top right you will see a small circle with an eye in it that refers to that video if you click on it. I have used this stamp several times and you can see how well it still sticks. I really like the quality of these background stamps. By putting the plastic of the stamp on the paper, you can already see what the result will be. You can see that the stamp fits exactly on the paper. With red memento ink I stamped my card. This ink is water-based. I have to stamp several times to get a nice opaque image. With a new juicy stamp pad you don't have to stamp as many times to get a good print. Now I've used this stamp before with a red archival type ink and this ink left a red glow on my stamp. Water-based ink does not do this, but it has no effect on the result of the print. After applying the red ink, I clean the stamp with a damp microfiber cloth and apply a second color of ink to the edges. This is a grey ink. It gives the whole thing a somewhat weathered look. With a makeup sponge I blend the rough edges a bit. You can also just do this with a blending brush. You see, this print suddenly has a much more masculine look. There's one small spot that I didn't take. Apparently there's a speck of dust on here. Now it's gone. You can see what a super good adhesive this stamp has. I've also used this stamp before. Alina stamps stick incredibly well and also print very nicely. I want to stamp the stamp with the images over my plate pattern. I'm looking closely to make sure it sits upright and right in the middle. I stamp with black memento ink, which is also water-based. I stamp the image directly onto the previous print. You should always leave water-based ink on the paper a little longer than oil-based ink. This is because water-based ink needs time to soak into the paper. Oil-based ink, on the other hand, stays on the paper and therefore stamps faster. It always does matter what paper you use. I always find smooth paper gives the best results. After a second stamping, the background of the stamped card is now ready and I remove it from the sticky sheet. I now place it in exactly the same place in the stamping tool on another line sheet. On top of this comes the sticky sheet again. Here I have the 2 squares from the Kilt Essential Shapes dies. I die cut the larger shape from black paper and die cut the smaller shape from white paper. I now place the white square on a spot on the card where I want to glue on this shape later. I take the diagonal lines of the plate pattern into account. Because I want to heat emboss this section later, I use the Memento Lux ink. This is a high-tech ink that stays on the paper and the embossing powder sticks to it. I also need to refill this ink pad, so I stamp on the same spot several times. I use transparent embossing powder. The clear paper you see is tracing paper. I always use this to catch my embossing powder so I can put it back in the jar. By tapping lightly on the back and blowing lightly, you remove the excess powder. I always enjoy embossing so much. So nice to see the matte powder become shiny. It makes a difference whether you heat only on the top or the bottom of the paper. For porous paper it is best to heat from the bottom. This is smooth paper and can be heated for a long time from above, without bulging. In this case, the embossing powder melts better because of it and becomes smoother. I stick the white square directly onto the black square. I prefer to do this with double-sided tape. That sticks really well and very nice and flat. The way I do this I have shown many times. I hope that by now you yourself are using this way of working. This way is much easier and better. Have you liked this video and subscribed to my channel Volk? I hope to get many more followers so that my instruction videos will be shown to more people, and also YouTube with its incomprehensible algorithm will introduce my videos to other viewers. Right now I am taking a look at what it would look like if I positioned the square in a different place than the place I stamped it. But I don't like this as much anyway, so I rotate it to the right place. I now stamp the text first. I always keep my white strips of paper in a bag. They always come in handy. Since I use the text Happy Birthday the most, it's of course already used up. And in order not to make too much stock of the other texts, I'm going to show you how I stamp this text several times without cutting it to pieces. I want to emboss the text, so I powder the paper with talcum powder. I ink only the text I need and stamp several pieces of paper in a row. If you like to keep the paper above and below the stamp white, you can also tape this piece of paper with masking tape. But you can also cover the stamp with masking tape. Don't forget to remove the tape before stamping. I always find transparent embossing powder on black text gives the best result. This time I'm not using the included text die, but I'm using one of the gilt dies. Fits perfectly and is super quick to do. This die comes in 3 sizes, so it is suitable for multiple texts. If you only want to use the word happy, you can go either way. Or use one of the other shapes from the Gilt Essential Shapes dies. I want to overlap the text strip and glue it on raised. And I also want to glue the square raised. I use the foam blocks from 3M that AlinaCraft sells. These have really good adhesive strength. Guaranteed that these pieces of paper will still be stuck a year from now. I consider the text bar still a bit bare. I ink blend with the same color red ink over a part of the bar. To do this, I start ink blending at one end of the strip and let it bleed into the white part. And to keep it matching, I add a very small amount of grey. To be able to glue the text strip on, I also need foam blocks. If I don't do it, it would be wonky. I measure out to about where I need a foam block and from where I just need to use glue. I always prefer to use my T-ruler when I want to glue something straight. And now to the envelope. I start with the flap of the envelope. This is where I want to stamp the plate pattern. I quickly mask the part I don't want to get stamped with my plastic line sheet. But for a nicer, sharper line, you'd better use masking tape for this, or if necessary, a piece of white paper that you tape down. Also with this print, I ink first with the red ink and then partly with the grey ink. And I clean the stamp in between with a damp cloth. I dab the grey ink away a bit with a sponge to make the transition look nicer. I do this twice. It depends on how juicy the ink still is and how dark you want the print to be. I am happy with this grey ink on top. I do think this has a masculine look to it. For the front of the envelope I use the men's stamp. This way the envelope matches the card nicely. Here I do the same thing I did with the flap. I like to have the watch in the border, so I place the stamp a little higher. I use black water-based memento ink and again I let the stamp rest on the paper a little longer to let the ink soak into the paper. You see, in this case you can't use the magnetizer because the stamp is the same size as the paper. I hope I have given you an idea to combine background stamps with each other and to use different die cuts to finish your card. If you would like to learn more about the stamp on your die cut technique, I encourage you to watch an earlier video of mine. The link for this is in the description. You will also find links to the products I used in the description. If you are going to shop on AliExpress, please click on one of my links. I will earn a few cents commission with this and it will cost you nothing extra. Thank you for watching my video to the end. Please also take a look at one of my other videos. And if you've seen them all, I hope to see you again soon. Bye bye!